All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Yenvy Truong. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's a special. We've pivoted from the past couple of weeks where we've really focused on health and women's health, and now we're going more into the relationship with business, the relationships with our founders or co-founders, and how we develop into business. And really, my focus here. Is to help educate and create awareness around health, wellness, financials or well-being, and also our relationships. And I think relationship is a relationship between everything. It's not just our husband and wives or boyfriend and girlfriend, our kids, but it's our relationship with money, our relationship with business. And so it all kind of ties in together. And so I thought that this would be a really great webinar. It was requested actually by a number of women in from C-level executives, a lot of individuals that are looking to actually start their own businesses, or they're in the process of building businesses and they're overwhelmed and they don't know if they should bring in a co-founder or just a partner or hire somebody. And then the individuals who have built it all by themselves and say, okay, what's next now? And so this is a great opportunity to really hear from both myself and my dear friend Iggy, I call her. It's Iglika, but my friend Iggy, who I went to college with, and we've had our journeys on the entrepreneurship and on the corporate side. So I am a serial entrepreneur, serial founder. I've founded and have developed a number of startup companies, and currently about four different companies, including nonprofits and for-profit companies at the same time. And so I've been on both sides of the table, from being an investor to being a solo entrepreneur to co-founding it with up to five co-founders. And so I have a deep, well-rounded knowledge on both sides, on different perspective and where the value sits. I wanted to bring Iggy on because she's built her company and she did it as a solo entrepreneur as well. And I wanted her to share the story because a lot of times I've worked with and mentored women who have founded the companies by themselves, and then sometimes they've founded it with different co-founders, and then both sides had their pros and cons. And so we want to get into that and also discuss, the lasting relationships around having partners and co-founding with partners as well, because I have um, a journey on good and bad on having co-founders and founders, on the relationship and the long-term relationship, building companies with friends and not building companies with friends, etc. And so we'll go into that. The way we're going to set this up today is uh, I built a number of questions that I think are powerful questions that Iggy and I will discuss and go over. And then please feel free to ask your question in the Q&A box if we're not discussing or touching the topic that you're looking for an answer in. And we'll keep an eye on that. And towards the last 20 or 30 minutes or so, Iggy and I will go through the questions, your questions, and then help discuss those questions as well. But before I go in to this, I have to read a quick disclaimer on today's webinar. This is something I have to do based on compliance, etc. And then Iggy will introduce herself and her background, and then we'll go ahead and kick it off from there. Okay, so the information provided in this webinar is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute professional, legal, financial, tax, or investment advice. While I, Yenvy, am a licensed investment advisor, this webinar does not establish any advisory relationship, nor is it a solicitation to buy or sell securities. All financial and investment decisions should be made based on your personal circumstances and in consultation with a licensed professional. Any views or opinions expressed by the speakers are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organizations. Investing involves risk, and past performance does not guarantee future results. By attending this webinar, you acknowledge that neither the host speaker nor any associated entities are responsible for any actions taken or decisions made based on the content presented. If you have specific concerns, we encourage you to consult with a specific or a qualified professional in the relevant field before making any decisions. By continuing with this webinar, you agree to these terms. Thank you. All right, Iggy. Let me
Hi,
introduce
everyone.
you. And Iggy, why don't you go ahead and just give a little background on yourself, where you come from a corporate perspective, and then a little bit about the company that you started and where you are today with that.
Sure. So thank you so much, firstly, for having me. I always enjoy our conversations. They are both fun and inspiring. So thanks again. Very briefly, I am an entrepreneur at the moment, but originally started in finance. I was an investment banker for over 10 years here in London. Previously studied in the States, undergrad and graduate school, moved to London, worked for an investment bank for over 10 years, and really basically had no intention of becoming an entrepreneur until 10 years ago when the idea about my company basically obsessed me. And I was overwhelmed by the urge to quit my very high and nice paying, steady job to start this journey. I now have been running my startup for just under 10 years. It is a mobile on demand beauty and wellness app. Very simply, it's like Uber for beauty and wellness services. We operate in London. Basically, a user can download our app and book any um, massage or beauty or wellness service to their home within a couple of hours. So that's what I've been doing for the last 9 years, alongside producing three very naughty children.
I would say they're naughty.
Well,
Active.
they're small, so by definition, they're very naughty.
They're active.
They're active, yes.
So, well, thank you for sharing that. So, one thing I've noticed is, and I'm going to put this out there, is that the majority of solo entrepreneur I've noticed, and when I mentor, or have been women, right? And so, I want to hear
Mm,
your perspective because I've been on both sides of building it independently and then also bringing on co-founders and whether they be male or female. But I've noticed that when I mentor women, the majority of the solo entrepreneurs have been women. And so if you don't mind just kind of going over the reason you did you think about having a co-founder when you first started, or what made you lean to being a solo entrepreneur to build this to it's U Spa is the name of
yeah.
their company.
Yes. Yes. Excellent question. I think you are exactly right. Statistically speaking, for most major countries, you read the stat, most small businesses are started by women. And I think that's a factor of our nature as women to be multitasking. We have this sort of natural um, ability or affinity, or we're able to perhaps think to ourselves, oh, I might have seven things on my plate, but I will happily take one more thing on because I want to do this thing. I think for me personally, I again was obsessed with the idea because I saw a niche in the market. There, when I started my company, there was nothing like it at the time. And again, at the time, I did not start with a co-founder. I didn't even think about having a co-founder, only because having worked in a very high pressure and highly active corporate environment, I was sort of coming out of the feeling of I can do anything and I don't need help and I can do it all by myself. How hard could it be? So I think that's a naive sentiment that perhaps a lot of women share, but it explains partly why we start these things and we take on these huge challenges, perhaps not realizing what we're really, taking on board and that we do need help.
And now, when you built a U Spa, it's a scalable company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of logistics involved and operational
Mm.
logistics and so from one is in hindsight, looking back now, if you had a co-founder, do you think that it would have accelerated the process in how you launched and developed the beginnings of your startup, or do you think it would have been about the same just because of the nature of building a startup in the first place from the very
Mm.
beginning? And then you share, and then I'll give my thoughts on it as well.
Sure. Absolutely. I think there's an old saying that goes, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And that couldn't be more true in the process of starting a company. You might be able to operate just a smidget faster if you're operating alone to start with, but you will always go so much further if you have another person that's taking on at least the same amount of tasks as you are, if not more. I see it so clearly now, looking back. Hindsight, of course, is 2020, but it's just it is the absolute truth that if I had a co-founder, we would have been able to launch probably even faster and be a lot further ahead in the first sort of year than we were able to get to.
Right? Because you worked full time on it yourself, I think, right?
I did,
Very
yes,
beginning.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
so my perspective on it, and I've been on both and I'm doing both, right? And so I have being a professional, serial founder in a way. I've learned the patterns and the systems to be able to really scale and deliver the organizations and the companies in a certain manner. Like there's looking back, you understand there's a cycle to how companies are built, right? And then there's things that you just can't go any faster sometimes, right? No matter
Mm,
how many people
mm,
you have on a team. And then
fair
there's
enough.
different types of companies. And so when I look at a company and I think about what is it that I'm building in regards to the company itself, we have lifestyle companies and then we have empire companies, right? I think an empire company, you always need some type of co-founder, even if you started it early on yourself with the concept and vision. But if you have a lifestyle, let's say a lifestyle company is, like a consultant company or something like that, you can always scale it to an empire. But at the beginning, it's just something that you can do as an artist, as a creator. When I say artist, it's the thing that you're really skilled at that time, right?
Mm,
And so, like, you're an engineer, you're a software engineer, you just want to do software engineering work. And so you bring on clients to do that. You don't need a big empire team, right? And so I always say, what is your comfort level in regards to how big your vision is for this opportunity? And I know you had a big
mm,
vision for U Spa,
mm,
right? And
mm,
so because the vision is so big, that's when you say, how do I can't do this vision by myself because it is big. But if you're like, I just want to be able to do what I love. It's a lifestyle business, and you don't necessarily
mm,
need a co-founder, especially if you bring on co-founders on a lifestyle business. Then I think there are a lot of there are a lot more chances for failure on the relationship itself, right?
of
Because
course. Yeah.
if I was the best software engineer and I was building software, and then somebody I brought on a co-founder that was telling me like what to do, and I was like, no, I'm the master at this. Don't tell me how to build my software, right? And so there's a lot of psychology involved in having partners and those type of relationships as well. And so I
Mm,
look at it from a perspective of what are we trying to achieve first, and then who fits in, and
of
who's vision
course.
it at first, right? And um, so just going on to the next question, for example, if you had a partner at, just going back hindsight now, like you started the company, you started building it yourself, right? And if you're looking at it, was there a period during the development of your company as a solo, founder where you said, man, I could really use a co-founder right now? Right? At what
Hmm.
point was it where it was like like in your face that you said, "Shit, I wish I had a co-founder at some point," or I wish I had just started this with somebody. At what
Yeah.
was that chasm or that siren for you?
Mm. I think unmistakably it was when we started to fundraise. So I started the company with personal funds and friends and family, but when we wanted to raise institutional funding, that's when it really hit me. The process was excruciatingly stressful,
Mhm.
and more so, and putting the admin work aside, where you have to create pitches, sit up till 1 a.m. to perfect your pitch deck and blah blah blah, and arrange meetings and go to these meetings. I think it's at that time when I felt so lonely and so just alone at the forefront of this enterprise that I really wished there was somebody that I could share more so the emotional and the stress burden with rather than even the work. Because the work itself, you can, always get someone to do a pitch deck or arrange meetings or whatever. But I think the psychological and the stress and the anxiety that being a solo founder when you are trying to raise money, the anxiety that it can produce can be overwhelming. And that was really the first time when I said, I wish there was somebody that was sharing this journey with me because it's just so hard. It is so hard. So
Yeah.
that was the first time, really, when I said, yep, I made a mistake. I wish there was somebody here with me. But like you said, just going back a little bit, 100% when somebody's thinking about starting a company, you have to think about what is the company that you're trying to set out. As I move on with my career and I'm thinking about doing some consulting work and having a consulting firm, I definitely would not be looking for any co-founders in my consulting firm because I'm the consultant. I'm the person with the skill and the knowledge and the art. So again, it's very different types of businesses we're talking about. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
And so that's at the forefront is what are you like, how big is your vision and what are you really
Mm,
building? And
yeah.
if it's a very big vision, that means that you're going very far, right?
Mm,
So that you need the right team. And usually those co-founders at the beginning aren't always the co-founders at the end. And I've had many instances with that, right? And being a serial entrepreneur, there's only periods in a company where I believe that I'm most valuable in the company because the redundancy of the operations from my perspective is where I get really bored, right?
mm,
So there are just people made for like get it up and going and then bring on the right people to run it to day and make it,
mm,
off of whatever's been built. And so there's different types of entrepreneurs and startup founders as well. And then there are the people who were just made to run corporations and just be in the corporations, right?
yeah.
And so, but also, when we have those co-founders, the question is, and let's say that in hindsight now, building the co-founder, if let's say if you did bring on a co-founder, what do you believe would have been, optimal for you in regards to what type of co-founder, what kind of co-founder would you be looking for? Just looking back now and knowing like, the gaps that you had and the need to have somebody next to you to really share in the battle, right? Like you're going in a battlefield by yourself. And I completely
Mm,
understand. Even when I had 3, 4 co-founders, the feeling as a CEO and a founder, either way, you're going to feel alone regardless. Because as the CEO, you're out there raising capital while your other founders are doing their thing and they can step in and help, but you're out there getting all the no's while you're trying to grab this and then trying to figure out to make sure that the company is still running the way it's supposed to according to the mission, vision, and direction that you've put in place, right? And so when I look at it from that perspective, looking back, like who would have been your ideal co-founder for what you needed during those, those gaps in times where you felt most alone or like needed a shoulder to like be in the battle with you?
a clone of myself, maybe. In an ideal world, I would have three of me, and we'd make an amazing team. Um, Look, the most logical question to that the most logical answer to that question is find a co-founder that has complementary skills to you.
That's
So
right.
if you're good at sales or people management, get somebody that's technical and is good at coding and etc. So obviously you want to plug in skills that you don't have so that together you make a coherent, perfect team. Um, Secondly, obviously, you have to get along and like that person because you will be spending so much time with them, and it will be, excruciatingly painful if you do not get along with that person. So, hopefully, somebody that you've worked with before, that you've had experience with, in some sort of a professional capacity would be helpful. Um, and sadly, but the reality is, in my humble opinion, is that in today's day and age, you do need a male co-founder to appease investors. We still, I think, as much as the world has made many strides in innovation, the reality is that a very, very small amount of capital still goes to female only founded companies. I think it's less than 2%. And literally, I think having a decent male co-founder, even if they're not extremely technical, but somebody that looks the part and talks the part, will increase your chances of fundraising from institutional investors 10x, if not more. So if I was to do this again, looking back, I would have had a male co-founder that had technical skills and that I got along with.
Um, my thought on co-founders and whether they be male or female, the honest truth is I don't think the sex matters from my perspective in raising capital, and because I've had male co-founders that just were useless, right? So like, they looked the part and everything like that, but when they
So
opened their
maybe they
mouth,
weren't
I was
useless
just
after
like,
all.
God, please don't talk anymore. And it just ruined, like, it ruined some investments because they, you know what I mean? But they looked the part, right?
Mm,
And so it's extremely important to have a very cohesive and synchronized partnership. And I think what happens is when we have the wrong partners, regardless if it's male or female, and you have the right co-founders and you fundamentally, started off correctly on the right foot and really have a strong relationship with your co-founders, you start to build magnificent stuff. Companies, you start moving the company forward, you start having traction, you bring in the right types of partners and people that's going to support you and move that, and that your vision and the business you're building is compelling, right? And then from there, you start to have traction. And I think regardless if you have um a male or female in it, just the fear fact that if you have a great relationship with your co-founders and you guys figured it out, and you're moving forward and there's traction, investors will come either way, right? And I think that investors will give you that money just because you kind of check the boxes that's needed to raise the type of capital that you need. Granted, there are the types of investors out there that look for that, right? And from my perspective, I'm not going to bring on a male co-founder that is useless just because I'm trying to take. Then now I'm setting up an entire environment of me being really unhappy later on, right? With the wrong investors and the wrong co-founder. And so I try to stay, being wiser now with the number of times I've built companies is, what's really true to me and what's true to the type of people that I'm bringing in. And so
mm,
that's just my opinion to it now because I've just been through this cycle so many times with different companies, and different types of co-founders where I had great co-founders that to life today we have amazing relationships and we build companies, every company together. There's this person that always comes in, right? And then I have people who follow me from different companies, and then I have co-founders that I've never spoke to again, right? And so
mm,
so there's a mix of that, but from each of those experiences I've learned from it and I understood why it happened the way it did.
mm. Yeah.
So
Just to be clear, I'm not advocating that somebody grabs the first male on that they see on the street and use that as a co-founder. I'm
yeah,
just saying that obviously the person has to have all the other skills, but
yes.
sometimes having, all the skills and being a male co-founder can help with fundraising versus
Yeah.
all the skills and a two female team.
Yes. I've,
In my,
Bill Gates said a while back, if I had to hire somebody, I would hire the laziest person. I wasn't going to say guy, but the laziest person because that person would find the fastest and efficient way to get the job
oh,
done, right? So,
I didn't know that. That's actually really good. That's funny.
yeah.
Yes, makes sense. Hmm.
I would hire that person. I would make them my partner, my co-founder. So I guess
Hmm.
going back to how you build your companies and the way we look at how we build companies, right? And the question is, um, would you hire or would you actually have a partner? You know what I mean? Like looking back at it, is it necessary to have a co-founder versus, just hiring people to do get the job done, to get the task done? Let's say money was not a factor and you had, your own fund for building your own
Hmm.
innovative companies, right? Would you still want a co-founder? Because now we're digging a little deeper, right, into the soul aspect of it. It's like having a sibling or having
Hmm.
a marriage, right?
Mm.
Money was not an issue whatsoever. Would you still need a co-founder, or would you have just hired the right people to be on your team?
Well, if money is no issue, then I mean, I suppose you could hire someone without giving away equity. But there will always be that little bit of extra commitment that a person has if they do have equity or skin in the game,
Right.
as if you wish. I think, again, thinking back on various conversations I've had with other founders, I was speaking to someone that was part of a four-person founding team. And I said, how do you guys get anything done? Like, it just sounds like so many people at the table and like so many decisions and opinions. How do you even like, and the
Mm-hmm.
person said to me, well, if you have the right people, imagine having four versions of yourself, basically, four people that are as dedicated, as hardworking, as forward looking, as capable as you. Imagine how much more you could achieve if those other four people or three people are as invested as
Mm-hmm.
you. So I guess again, the answer is it depends on the company, it depends on what you're trying to achieve, it depends on the person, what they're incentivized by. Some people don't care for equity, some people only want equity and they don't want to be hired. So I suppose it's a matter of again what you're trying to achieve and how much help you think you need with it. But I generally, me personally, I would have liked to have had co-founder just because I would have liked somebody to share the burden with me
Mm.
of everything, to share the burden
Yes.
and the responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of responsibility to carry an entire company on one person's shoulders, and I would have liked to have someone to share that responsibility with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's fairly lonely in that respect. I've, in listening, it reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend who's an only child, right?
Mm,
And my friend grew up as an only child, didn't know any better of what it's like to have a sibling. Like she's like, I was surrounded by friends, and they were practically my sisters, right? My best friends, and so not having a brother or sister, like I was happy growing up either way. The only time that I realized I wished I had a sibling was when my mother was sick and I was by myself in the hospital.
mm,
I sat there and I said, I wish I had somebody that I can share this feeling with
mm.
so that other person understood what I was going through.
Yeah,
Right. And so
there
she
you
goes,
go.
at that moment, that was the loneliest feeling I had when my mother was sick and I didn't have anybody to have this soul feeling connection with, right? And so that piece of it, that is exactly how we would describe being a solo entrepreneur,
Mm,
right?
exactly.
Is that
100%.
loneliness when
Absolutely.
kind of like in the abyss, in the darkness. And you're like, oh my God, I'm walking through. It's like walking through a forest by yourself, right? Even if you had one person, a dark forest by yourself, even if you had one person with you, you would feel better, right?
Yeah.
And so that is the piece of it that's having that because of having a co-founder that starts it. But what about the co-founders? Because I have companies that I've mentored that goes, they've been a year into their company or a year and a half or 2 years in, and I was like, and they go, I need a co-founder. What's your thought on that? Looking at it backwards, like let's say you've already gone through like the first year or 2 years. Now you're like,
Hmm.
you've built it by yourself, and then you're like, do I bring on a co-founder now, or do I just hire somebody? Because I have people that I mentor and I work with that start looking for a co-founder much later on.
Mm. Well, I think again depends on firstly what that other person that you want to bring in is incentivized by. But my general opinion is that titles are just don't matter. Whether you call someone co-founder, CIO, CFO, it doesn't matter. Like we get so hung up. When you start a company, for example, when I started my company, I was so proud to be the CEO and founder. It was just a really amazing thing to read that after my name. 6 months in, that wears off really quickly. The novelty factor of that title wears off really quickly, and I could care less whether I'm listed as janitor, manager, director, CEO, whatever. I just needed help and I wanted help. And if I had the wherewithal and the sense to look for a co-founder, then again, I wouldn't have minded at all for that person to be a co-founder, to be a CIO, to be hired, whatever they wanted to be. If I had the right person, it would have been, again, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have minded. It doesn't matter when that person comes in, 1 year and 2 years, and if you need them, you need them.
That's right.
If you want them to be a co-founder, make them co-founder. If that's, it will make your life easier. It doesn't matter the title, really.
Yeah. And so I guess the most important piece to think about on the co-founder when you're looking for is there somebody that's walking through this battlefield with you and can share that
Mm,
with you, right? Walking through that dark forest and knowing that that person is going to walk with you. I think that's the most important piece of the co-founder. And then it helps that if the co-founder knows that path already, it's like, oh yeah, I've walked through this forest before, right?
yeah,
So that becomes
absolutely.
really valuable for a first time entrepreneur at least, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So like let's go through some questions around finding the right co-founders,
Mm,
right? I have some opinion on, how to find the right co-founders, how to I feel like having a co-founder is almost like a marriage. You want to think about,
sure.
that relationship, the relationship dynamic in a marriage. It's almost at the point where I need to like coach co-founders because it's like a bad marriage almost. Like you need a marriage counselor or co-founder counselor, right?
Sure. Of
It's
course.
that it gets to that point. And it's like when the co-founders are not in sync and they're fighting and they're arguing, it's the company suffers, the children suffers, right? And so
It's
that's
true.
it's the same, correlation in a sense. And so, like you had your employees. What do you think, the qualities of the right co-founders for you? And you said somebody we identified somebody that's willing to walk through the trenches with you, but
Yeah.
let's just say from a tactical and practical standpoint.
Mm.
So,
Well,
yeah.
actually, sort of about 4 years ago, I came to a pivotal point in my company where I almost, I guess, not hired, but let a co-founder and a co-founders. It's when we struck a strategic partnership with our tech partners that basically provide the back end for my company. So at the time, so this is 4 years ago, they bought a stake in USPA, and in return for that equity, I got their services and the back end, and the person that is in charge of that company effectively became my co-founder. But and in a way, I felt this was actually a real moment of relief for me because I knew now that there is another senior person that is in charge of all the tech that is also has a stake in seeing this through and making our joint enterprise a success. So again, it goes back to the original point of find somebody that has complementary skills to you. I would have looked for me not being a technical person. I'm not a coder. I'm much better at business development, sales, business management, etc. So somebody that had the technical background was paramount and of great importance to me. And that person that I still work with, we still work together, and he's still very much a sounding board. He is somebody that is also as ambitious as I am. I think he took a chance on us and on me, and that gave me confidence and gave me sort of that extra kick at the time to keep going and to push further. And I think you almost need that in a co-founder. You need somebody that has complementary skills to you, somebody that you respect for their personality and their opinions and their background, and also somebody that believes in you and what you've built and wants to take that further and make it even bigger and better. Almost like having a little personal cheerleader in your teammate. So, you're looking for a teammate, you're looking for somebody that can again share that big vision with you. Um, that's yeah, that's will be the perfect scenario for anybody looking for a co-founder.
And if I dig into the psychology of building an organization itself, I look at it like let's say a basketball team, right? There are three
Mm,
types of people, like to the core that they love to do. And there's the entrepreneur who has this vision and wants to take vision to life. That's
mhm,
me in every aspect, right? And then there are we call them the operation leader, the people who love to just run companies and build teams, have a
mhm,
system in place, let me build this company. And then there's the artist, the person that's really skilled at something. So when I look at a basketball team, you got the artist who's the basketball player, right?
mm,
And then you have the operation manager, or the not operation, the leader manager. That's the coach, the basketball coach itself. And then you have the entrepreneur who is the owner of the
mm,
organization. And we use the word entrepreneur as more of a who you are internally, not necessarily as a noun, right?
mhm,
It's how you act and how you move through the world as an entrepreneur, meaning that you take really big risks. So if you look at basketball,
mm,
the entrepreneur will invest everything, right, into buying that basketball because they have a vision that, oh, I'm going to build it to this, I'm going to scale it like that. And then I need the management leader that knows how to pick the right basketball members. And so
mm,
bring on a coach, and that coach could be your co-founder. And
mm,
that basketball player could be your co-founder as well, right? But there's something about the three of you that you have an understanding is this person has that vision, this person is going to go out and then think about how they're gonna like make us bigger. You have the person that says, I'm going to build the best team and best organization. And you have the person that says, we need the best product and services, right? And so identifying that while you're in the midst of building a team, or even having that discussion with your team now, right? While you're in the stage of like, hey, I want to build a company. Well, who are you? Right? And so that
mm,
because if you had a bunch of visionaries, you may
mm.
have different vision at the same time, and then you're not going to get anywhere. So it's really important to have those type of distinction amongst like the team members itself. There's many layers to this, but just from the high level,
Absolutely.
it's those type of discussion. And it's almost like when I was mentoring some people, some new entrepreneurs that were looking to start their own company, and they were partners, and they met each other, and because they liked each other, they said, let's start a company together. And then I sat down with them. I go, okay, answer all these questions first, and then with each other. And then, you know, what happens is 6, 8 months later, they ended up stopping that business or the partnership because the fundamentals weren't there in having the
Mm,
right partnership. And so it's extremely important that we ask these very hard questions early on,
mm.
about equity and what's going to happen when we go raise money and la la la, la, how much. So there's all these other pieces to it that needs to be talked through early on. Do you have anything to add to that, or like I can go into the next questions?
No, I think you nailed it on the head. You have the visionary, the executor, and the operator. And you obviously can't have three operators or three visionaries or three executors. So you need to have a balanced skill set on the team. Yeah.
And to that point is that um the number of co-founders, like what would you say would be like an ideal number of co-founders?
I think three would be probably ideal. Two is good. Three is ideal. Four, you're getting into a little bit, maybe the equity is a bit split a bit too thin, and then you raise more money, you get diluted, you lose a bit of interest later on. So I think three is a good number to start with. Also helps diffuse arguments. If two people are fighting, maybe the third one can be a mediator. So three probably is an optimal number.
Yeah, I agree with that. Three is optimal. Just from I've been on being by myself to having two to having
Mm,
all the way to five,
mm,
including myself. And so I've been
yeah.
really like spread very thin in equity,
Mm,
to just being by myself and going, okay, you know,
mm,
I have to spend all my own money and hire my, you know what I mean, and do all these things myself.
mm.
So on both sides, so I think three is a great number, especially if we can divide it according to like our own passion and interests. And then
Yeah,
we're really working on things that we really love to do, not just on the day-to-day level. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
that's my thought. Um, let's go into I don't want to get divisive, but let's go into the male and female question. Any thoughts on that? Just kind of going digging in a little bit more on that. Like I know I don't want to be divisive, but like I look at it and my stance on it, helping women build their legacy and really helping women establish their legacy. So I'm a little biased on that perspective because I think that there's enough men in the world that support men in building companies and ventures, right? And it's great. But I think we're at a space where women have to take that stance as well and that direction. And I think that, I don't want to be divisive, but I at the same level, I want to lean heavier on empowering women to really step up and be the co-founders, be the entrepreneurs, whether it be solo or being with two or three, and then having the male co-founder, like you said, right? But just
Mm,
the females who have that vision stepping up and doing it, and then deciding who the right founder is. But that's my feel on it because it is heavy on one side, and I don't want to lean on the side that's already heavy. You know, I'm
mm.
I'm I'm the type of person that just likes to be on the other side of things, right? Like disrupt.
Sure. Look, I mean, I'm all for women supporting women, but I think having played the game for now 9 years in the startup world, I've just come up to a wall so many times that I've just become disillusioned with the game in
Mm,
the sense that I been in VC meetings many times where I go into pitch alone and I have traction, I have early revenue, I have MVP build, and I'm being told, oh, great, but get a little bit more traction, then come back to us in 6 months. And then the next guy comes in and it's two guys, they don't have nothing but an idea, and they walk out with $500,000 term sheet just because they look the part and they fit the part. So I really did want to believe that hard work and grit alone can get it done. And that's what I had been almost raised to believe in my years in investment banking, because investment banking is very much it is a sexist world in itself, but still it is fairly meritocratic in the sense that if you work hard, you get rewarded. You might
yeah.
get rewarded a little bit less than the men, but you're still getting a high level of reward. So I thought that meritocracy and that sort of mentality carries on into the real world as well. It doesn't, in my personal opinion. And I think in order for me now to be able to help women, I first have to beat the men in their own game in a
Mhm.
way. So for me to be in a position now to help other women, I first need to beat the men in their game. And if that means having had a male co-founder just to look the part so that I can get investments better, bigger investments, scale up faster, exit faster, make more money, and then hire more women and invest in more women, that would have been the ideal scenario. Do you see what I mean? So I'm very much for helping women, but I realize that sometimes you got to play the game a little bit and play the male game to be able to be in a position to
I get
help
it.
all the women.
Very
Yeah.
Game of Thrones. No, I'm just kidding. I was like,
Very what? Oh,
the
Game of
Game of
Thrones.
Thrones.
Sure. Call
No,
it whatever you want
it
to call
is.
it,
That's
but
that's the world. Unfortunately, that is the world. You got the brohoods, right? And which that's exactly the bromance, the brohood, that whole, there's books written about it, there's articles written about it, right? That is the truth. There's a reason why, it's discussed because that is the truth. And what you're saying is exactly it. And again, with me being very what's the word? Um I just don't like to lean in on what I know is wrong regarding how bad it is, or like how much, you know what I mean? And again, that's yours, and then this is mine because
Mm,
I'm taking the role of no, just because that's what you need, I'm not gonna do it. Not because
mm,
that's what you need, just to say no. It's let me be, if I have to be that first to step into the darkness and have all the arrows in my back while I'm doing it, then let me be that person, right? And so believe me, I have arrows in my back just like you do, right? Building this as a woman and building companies by yourself with co-founders of just women or whatever, if it's that's the arrow on the back. But at the same
mm.
point, there's a lot of women with arrows on their back that wants to help other women as well. And so we have to find,
Absolutely.
we have to find that group as well, because I think and that's exactly what I'm working on, right? Is building those communities of women who understand that this is the nature of what we're dealing with in regards to the funding and finding the right co-founders, and not just the, we talk about the kumbaya of finding a company and right co-founders, but then when the reality hits, the reality does hit, right? Which is,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have this or you don't have that, you don't have a technical leader, you don't have that, or that your co-founder isn't good enough, right? We've
Mm.
had that. I had male co-founders where investors are like, those guys have no experience whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I had to be the person that had to like figure out how to navigate around that type of stuff too.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
there's always going to be something with investors. And I think, I've probably pitched 500 different investors over my time period of raising money. And then there are some that they're just not worth talking to. I'm sorry.
Yeah, look,
Like,
for sure. I mean, if you have, again, if you've had the, the success and, that you've had, of course, would be in a position to do the right thing going forward and go for the hard choice again. I'm just thinking hindsight, I could have saved myself a lot of headaches and just, if I was like, okay, I'll play the game. I get it, the jig is up. Like, fine. Like if I had that realization earlier, like I would have happily swallowed my pride you know, to get further than where I am now. So just lessons learned, I suppose. But if I had done it all by myself, if I managed to get where I want to be, then yeah, for sure I wouldn't be looking to help other men because they just surely didn't help me. That's for
mhm,
sure.
yeah.
And yeah, so
And
mm.
what are your thoughts on the investment firms that are purely women that says that we're here to invest in women, and that did you run across those type of investment, and did they have the same, like, is it just more lip service as a fund, or was there real fundamentals around like what their mission was?
So this is a huge, PR topic, and I see all the time, all women for women fund and female fund and blah blah blah. And the reality of the fact is that I have spoken to female only funds, and we invest in female only. But the reality again is that they're probably hundreds times smaller than any male run funds or bigger funds. So the female focused funds are statistically incredibly small compared to the bigger VCs that are out there. So naturally, they will write much smaller tickets,
Mhm.
and they will be even more scrutinous of who they write the ticket to and their term sheet too. So whereas a bigger VC might easily give you, a million or two, maybe a female only fund will only give you a couple 100,000 because that's what they can do, even if they do believe in you. So it's a little bit of a, you know, yes, they do want to help, but women being women, again, we are firstly naturally more scrutinous and more careful in what we invest in. So
Mm,
we will write less tickets than a male would because they just might have more money to dispose of. And yeah, and the tickets will be smaller. So there is a natural downward bias in the female only funds. Unfortunately, it's still, not an area that is hugely helpful, and it's not really moving the needle.
Mhm.
It's great initiative, and again, it's a little bit like all the ESG funds that sprung up, in the last few years. Oh, environmentally friendly, a lot of lip service.
Mhm.
Um, how much environmentally friendly investments these funds have done is a different story. It's a little bit, in my humble opinion, again, with the female funds, female only, we champion women, blah, blah, blah. How much money have you actually put to work? I don't think it's that many
Mhm.
and that
And
much.
let's go back to just doing this on your own and what this looks like, right? In regards to investment on your own. At what point, like tell the story of how you finance the whole operation on your own, because that's a big one, right? Like you
Mm,
started off, because when I had my founders, we decided on a number, and we said, okay,
mm,
this is how much we're going to put in equally, and this is the number of shares we're going to have, and we'll use this as a startup fund, and then we'll hit this milestone, and we'll go raise the next round, right? Friends and family, and then seed,
mm.
etc. And so
Yeah.
with that, you were the only one. I mean, like eventually as co-founders, I think we put in with friends and family almost $1 million, right?
Mm,
For my co-founders and I in one of my companies. Um, and so for you, that's a significant stake that you have to take early on, especially a tech enabled
mm.
company, right? And
Yeah.
so tell me like what your budget process was and what that looked like when you were making that decision on saying,
Well,
I'm going to take this on myself.
I'll tell you, there wasn't any, and you did obviously the smart thing of having co-founders and agreeing, a limit of how much you're going to invest. I was blinded by my vision and put my entire life savings into this to get it off the ground, believing that once it's launched, investors are going to flock to me and, I will exit in 3 years and be a millionaire. I literally believe that. Again, this is so naive. I was so wrong at the time. I was so um I guess illusioned, not even disillusioned, but I was illusioned by all the entrepreneur stories in the press. I mean, we're not talking like 10 years ago. Everyone was having multiple $1 million exits and everyone was being an entrepreneur, and it all sounded so easy and it's so achievable. So again, me being the very ambitious person that I am, I was like, I can do this. I will put all of my money into this and it'll be amazing. And I did, and it wasn't. And, so now I'm sitting here 9 years later, still scraping, from where we started. But obviously, after I ran out of my own money, which I did, then I tried to raise institutional money. So that's when all the talks with VCs came in and angel investors. And VCs again, disappointingly kept on saying, "Oh, great start, but come back when you have a little bit more traction, and come back when you have a little bit more revenue, and then we'll invest in you. You're on the right track, but come back, come back, come back." Eventually this comeback became too late and I was running out of money. So then the other option here in the UK was to do crowdfunding.
Mm.
It's, I guess, similar to what you have in the States is Kickstarter, but
We have a
here in the
couple.
UK,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, fine. So here in the UK, you have crowdfunding, which is a great way for businesses to raise funds from the crowd. And this could be literally anyone. And that became my only next option. And thankfully, it works better when the business is a consumer facing business. So it's hard to raise crowdfunding for a B2B company, for example, or a software like SaaS
Yeah.
company because there's no consumer touch point. But when you have a business that could be a product or service that is consumer facing and B2C, then people can really interact with it and understand it. And it's very easy for them, like, oh, I'll put in 50 pounds or 100 pounds or whatever it is, 1,000, 2,000, whatever it is. So that's how we raised our first round of funding. That gave us probably about a year and a half of runway. And then again, I tried to tap the VCs later on. Now we had more revenue, but again, they said the same thing. Oh, great, but come back later when you have even more revenue and more traction and all that. And I was like, you know what, just forget it. So I then did another raise, another round of crowdfunding. And at that point, also took on our technical partners who took on equity into the business. So that was a strategic move that really saved us a lot of money in tech development costs because that was before that our tech development costs were outsourced. So we were paying an outside team to manage all of our back end. Now the technical team, a different technical team, basically owns part of the company, so I don't have to. So we don't have to pay anything for tech costs, which is one of the biggest costs in any
Yeah.
tech startup.
Hmm.
So that's what helped us really survive on the second round. So that was the second round of funding where we did partly the tech contract and again raised a little bit more from the crowd. And that's what's been keeping us going for the last, I guess, the last 3 years or 4 years even. It's been 4 years since then. So we're surviving basically on repeat business and whatever funds we had
Yeah.
left
You
from
have a
then.
sustained business, you have a sustained business right now. And so that's almost to this testament of move fast or move far, right? That you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier on. And so now just kind of reflecting, and we only have a couple minutes left. Now that I mentioned the entrepreneur, the management leader, and then the artist, which of the three are you?
Well, in my next personal consulting venture, I will be the artist. I'm not sure I want to start any more companies myself, but if I was to start one or be asked to join on a starting team, I definitely would not want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to have the head hat anymore. I'm very happy to take second fiddle. I'm very happy to be a supporting second right hand. I do not want to be the entrepreneur anymore. It is too much. It's hard. It's too much. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah. And for
That's
me,
just me.
it's there's some type of weird adrenaline rush, and obviously I have an addiction to this. And so I keep on building companies, and it's like, how people, and you can relate to this when women say they had their first child, they're like, oh my gosh, that was the most painful thing. And then all of a sudden they have the second one and then third one.
Well, you know what? I have 3 kids, so talk to me in 2 years. Maybe I have two more companies by then.
Exactly, exactly. So that's my thing with business. They're my babies, right?
Yeah, there you go.
No,
Never say never, I suppose. Never say never.
no, I know you'll be back in it.
We'll
You're
see.
already asking
Only
me.
with
So,
you. Only with you.
yeah,
Only
exactly.
if you're my co-founder.
So, any last words? We have a minute left. You want to share with the audience? This is gonna be on YouTube, everyone. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll and if you registered and signed up for this, you'll get a link tomorrow to the channel on and then please add any comments or add anything that you would like to see. I have a great network of people that can provide information and anything that you're really interested in learning about. I have specialists and friends and people that can share information and knowledge around whatever it is that we need to be aware of. So thank you so much for everyone. Iggy, any last words?
No, just good luck to everyone who's thinking about starting a company. It is incredibly challenging, but also can be one of the most rewarding things you've ever done. So don't let me discourage you in any way, but don't do it. I'm just kidding.
That's what Elon Musk said, right? He goes, "Don't do it. It's the most painful thing ever." But then,
If 10 people tell you don't do it, and if you still want to do it, then you should probably do it.
yeah, I agree. I agree, 1000%.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Iggy. It was a lot of fun having the discussion with you. And then
Always.
I'll be in Paris. Let's hook up.
All right. See you soon.
I'll talk to you
Ciao.
later. Bye-bye.
Bye.